Mental Asylum, nestled in the quiet countryside of regional Victoria, holds a dark and unsettling history. Built in 1865, at a time when little was understood about mental health, its long corridors and foreboding rooms have borne witness to unspeakable suffering. Over the years, countless patients were subjected to brutal treatments, such as lobotomies and electroshock therapy. The very walls seem to echo with the cries of those who perished within, their lives cut short by barbaric medical practices that resulted in more than 13,000 deaths. The asylum, now abandoned and decaying, has gained a sinister reputation for being one of the most haunted locations in Australia. Visitors often speak of a heavy, oppressive atmosphere that lingers in the air, making it difficult to breathe. But it's not just the feeling of dread that unnerves those who dare to walk the halls. Airedale has its share of ghostly inhabitants, and among them is one who stands out above all others: Nurse Carey. Nurse Carey worked in the asylum's women's ward during its prime, and though records of her life remain vague, her presence in death is unmistakable. Many who visit the asylum today have heard the distinct clicking of heels echoing down the empty corridors, accompanied by a soft, almost soothing voice calling out as though she were still tending to her patients. But the calmness is deceiving. There's something sinister behind her spectral presence. Some believe Nurse Carey is still caring for the souls trapped in the asylum, while others think she was as cruel in life as the treatments she administered. The women's ward, in particular, is a hotspot for paranormal activity. Tour guides have recounted countless experiences of people suddenly feeling cold hands on their shoulders or hearing disembodied whispers urging them to leave. Shh! One chilling encounter involved a young woman on a guided tour who claimed she felt fingers brushing through her hair, only to turn around and find no one there. Yet Nurse Carey isn't the only spirit that lingers in the asylum. Over the years, visitors have reported seeing shadowy figures darting in and out of doorways, barely visible but always watching. Some speak of an overwhelming feeling of being followed, the sense that someone or something is just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to make its presence known. These shadow people, faceless and silent, move through the halls as if they're trapped in time, reliving the trauma of their tragic pasts. Perhaps the most terrifying experiences come from those who dare to wander too far from the safety of the tour groups. There have been several reports of people being physically attacked by unseen forces, scratches appearing on their arms or necks, sharp pains that feel like bites, and even the sensation of being shoved by invisible hands. One man who ventured into the abandoned operating theater, where lobotomies were once performed, claimed he was violently pushed against a wall, leaving him gasping for air and too terrified to return. Then there are the long-forgotten rooms hidden deep within the asylum, rooms that once held patients deemed too dangerous or disturbed to mix with the general population. Some say that the spirits in these areas are the most aggressive, angry at the cruelty they suffered and desperate for release. Unexplained bangs, doors slamming shut on their own, and disembodied screams are common occurrences in these darker corners of the asylum. Despite its abandonment, Airedale's past refuses to stay buried, and the restless spirits of those who died there seem intent on reminding the living of the horrors that took place within its walls. As night falls over the asylum, the shadows grow longer, and the boundary between the living and the dead becomes frighteningly thin. Whether it's Nurse Carey still walking the halls, shadow people lurking in the corners, or the tortured souls of former patients seeking revenge, Airedale Mental Asylum remains a place of untold terror where the past is never truly dead, and neither are its ghosts. Would you dare to visit? Adelaide Arcade, standing in the heart of bustling Adelaide, may appear to be just another elegant shopping destination with its Victorian charm and glossy storefronts, but beneath its polished surface lies a chilling past. Having opened its doors in the mid-1800s, Adelaide Arcade is one of Australia's oldest shopping arcades, and with such age comes a legacy steeped in both history and tragedy. It is a place where the whispers of the past seem to merge with the present, and its shadowed corridors are said to be home to more than just shoppers. The most well-known ghost that haunts the arcade is Frances Clooney, the unfortunate caretaker whose death still shrouds the building in mystery. In 1887, Clooney's mangled body was discovered in the machinery that powered Adelaide Arcade's electric lighting. While the official report ruled his death an accident, with speculation that he had been caught in the moving parts while attempting a repair, rumors soon began to swirl. Some believed that Clooney's death was no accident at all, that he had been pushed, or worse, murdered in cold blood by someone seeking revenge or hiding a dark secret. The truth was never uncovered, but one thing is certain: Francis Clooney never left the arcade. Today, visitors and staff alike claim that Clooney's ghost still roams the arcade, particularly near the Manhattan dry cleaners, the very spot where he met his grisly end. Employees report strange happenings on a daily basis. Tools go missing only to reappear in odd places, lights flicker with no explanation, and a cold draft sweeps through the building even on the hottest days. At night, when the arcade is empty, some have reported the eerie sound of footsteps echoing down the long, empty halls, always coming from behind, but never from anyone they can see. Several security guards have encountered Clooney's ghost firsthand. One guard, patrolling late at night, recounted the chilling experience of seeing a man in old-fashioned clothing standing near the dry cleaners. The figure appeared solid, but when the guard called out, the man simply faded into the shadows. Others have heard the unmistakable creak of heavy boots pacing in the stairwells, only to find the area deserted when they went to investigate. The sightings have become so frequent that many believe Clooney's spirit is watching over the arcade, perhaps still fulfilling his duties as caretaker, trapped between life and death. But Clooney is not the only spirit said to haunt the arcade. Other, less recognizable apparitions have been spotted, particularly in the basement areas and the darker corners of the building. Shoppers and workers alike have reported catching glimpses of figures out of the corner of their eye, only for the figures to vanish when they turn to look. Some describe feeling a presence behind them, a cold hand brushing their shoulder, or an overwhelming sense of dread as they pass through certain parts of the arcade. One woman even claimed she saw a spectral figure standing at the top of the stairwell, its face twisted in a silent scream before it disappeared into thin air. There are also tales of poltergeist-like activity in some of the shops. Store owners have reported objects flying off shelves, doors slamming shut on their own, and displays being inexplicably knocked over. In one incident, a store's security camera caught footage of a heavy metal mannequin stand being shoved violently to the ground, despite no one being near it at the time. The footage showed nothing but an empty room, but the force with which the stand was pushed suggested something, or someone unseen, had made its presence known. Adding to the eerie atmosphere of Adelaide Arcade is the fact that the building itself seems to have its own mood. At times, the space feels light and airy, bustling with the energy of shoppers. But as the day turns to night, the atmosphere shifts. The shadows grow longer, the air sense of being watched becomes almost unbearable. Even those who don't believe in ghosts have admitted to feeling uneasy after dark, as if the spirits of the past awaken when the arcade is at its quietest. There are those who wonder if Francis Clooney is still seeking justice for whatever befell him that fateful night, his spirit restless and unable to move on. Others believe that the arcade itself has become a magnet for the supernatural, drawing in spirits from across the city, their energy feeding off the bustling crowds by day and the silence of night. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is clear: Adelaide Arcade is far more than a historical shopping destination. Its grand halls and ornate ceilings may mask the tragic history that lingers beneath, but for those who listen closely, the whispers of the past are impossible to ignore. And if you ever find yourself wandering through the arcade after hours, pay attention to the footsteps behind you. They may not belong to the living. Kapunda, a small town just an hour away from Adelaide, is renowned for its haunted reputation, earning the title of the most haunted town in Australia. The chilling atmosphere that clings to Kapunda's narrow streets is undeniable, but nothing compares to the spine-tingling terror that lurks within the North Kapunda Hotel. Once a lively inn, now it stands as a sinister monument to the restless dead, with multiple spirits said to wander its halls, some benign, others deeply malevolent. Among the hotel's many ghosts are the spirits of two young girls, their presence felt throughout the building, but especially upstairs. The older girl is said to linger in the upper rooms, trapped in a state of eternal fear, forever trying to escape the horrors of her past. Witnesses claim that her delicate footsteps can be heard pacing along the creaky floorboards at night, and some have even caught glimpses of her in old-fashioned clothing, her face etched with worry. It is said that she refuses to leave the safety of the upper floors. For down below, a malevolent force awaits, a dark entity she cannot escape. The younger girl, meanwhile, is often seen playing by the entrance or in the hallways. Her giggles, though seemingly innocent, are always tinged with sadness, and some have reported hearing her faint cries in the middle of the night. Many believe that the younger spirit does not fully understand the danger that lurks within the hotel's walls. Visitors have tried to interact with her, but when they get too close, she vanishes, leaving only the cold touch of her presence behind. However, there is an ominous reason why she lingers close to the entrance, as if waiting for someone to save her. Both girls are said to be hiding from a dark presence within the hotel, a shadowy figure known only as the Man in Black. His very appearance is unsettling. Clad entirely in black with a wide-brimmed hat that obscures his face, this menacing spirit has earned a reputation for terrorizing the female spirits and visitors alike. His energy is dark, heavy, and suffocating, making his presence known even before he is seen. Women who enter the hotel often describe feeling a strange pressure on their chest or an overwhelming sense of dread. Some have been pushed, scratched, or even knocked down by an unseen force, leaving them shaken and terrified. It is said that the Man in Black has a deep misogynistic streak, targeting women with a particular venom. Female visitors to the hotel frequently report feeling watched, their hair tugged, or cold hands brushing against their skin, especially when they're alone. Even the spirits of the two young girls seem to avoid him, particularly the older one, who stays upstairs to evade his violent outbursts. There is an unsettling theory that he may have been responsible for the deaths of these girls when they were alive, his anger and cruelty transcending death, leaving them in a state of perpetual fear. However, the Man in Black is not the only dark figure tied to the North Kapunda Hotel. Among the hotel's most infamous spirits is Dr. Blood, a name that sends shivers down the spine of anyone who knows the town's dark history. While his real name has been lost to time, Dr. Blood was a local physician rumored to have performed horrific experiments on humans during the late 1800s. His methods were brutal, his morality non-existent, and it's said that he used the hotel's cellar as his personal laboratory, a place where screams would be muffled by the thick stone walls. The legend of Dr. Blood lingers strongly within the hotel. Visitors brave enough to descend into the dark and musty cellar report hearing the faint sounds of chains clinking, followed by whispers or even the echoes of desperate screams. On some nights, the smell of burning flesh and antiseptic wafts through the air, sending chills down the spines of those who dare venture into his former lair. Dr. Blood's spirit is said to wander the hotel, forever tied to the horrors he committed, and some say his presence can still be felt by those with a sensitive connection to the paranormal. People who enter the cellar often complain of sudden headaches or dizziness, as if they've stepped into a vortex of pain and suffering that Dr. Blood created long ago. The dark energy within the North Kapunda Hotel seems to draw in those curious enough to explore its haunted halls, but not everyone leaves unscathed. Some guests have reported vivid nightmares after staying in the hotel, dreams so real they can still feel the ghostly touch of the spirits when they wake. Others leave with strange bruises or scratches that they cannot explain, claiming to have been attacked by the unseen forces that inhabit the place. The hotel has become a hotspot for paranormal investigators, but even they are not immune to the chilling phenomena. Apparitions, shadow figures, and disembodied voices are a common occurrence, and many investigators have captured eerie photos and recordings that defy explanation. Despite its haunted reputation, the hotel remains open for business, inviting the brave or the foolish to spend a night in its haunted rooms. But those who enter must be prepared for what might find them. The North Kapunda Hotel is more than just a relic of the past. It is a living entity, filled with the restless souls of those who met tragic ends within its walls. For those brave enough to visit, beware, for the spirits that linger here are not always content to remain in the shadows. Kapunda may be the most haunted town in Australia, but it is the North Kapunda Hotel, a hotel where the true horrors wait in the dark. The Old Melbourne Gaol is one of Australia's most notorious historical landmarks, a place that once held the country's most infamous criminals, including the legendary outlaw Ned Kelly. Its stone walls and iron bars hold countless stories of suffering, death, and torment. Some visitors come to see Kelly's death mask, a haunting reminder of the gallows, but many leave with more than just a brush with history. They leave with the unsettling feeling that something far more sinister still lingers within the gaol. For over a century, the Old Melbourne Gaol has stood as a grim reminder of Australia's harsh past, where prisoners faced extreme punishment and met violent ends. The executions held here were brutal, and some say the energy of those final moments remains trapped within the building. Visitors often report a strange chill in the air, the feeling of being watched, or an inexplicable sense of dread as they walk through the narrow corridors. But of all the haunted spaces within the gaol, one stands out above the rest, the ominous Cell 17 Teen. Cell 17 is notorious even among the gaol's many ghost stories. It is a small, windowless room tucked away in the corner of the second floor, its air thick with the weight of unseen forces. Unlike other cells, there is no clear record of which prisoner once called it home, but the violent and aggressive activity that has been reported there suggests a tormented soul remains locked inside. Some say it's the spirit of an inmate who died under mysterious circumstances, while others believe something even darker resides within the cell, a malevolent entity that feeds off fear and pain. Those brave enough to step inside Cell 7 often describe an immediate change in atmosphere. The temperature plummets and the air becomes thick and suffocating, as if something unseen is pressing down on them. The sensation is overwhelming, leaving many feeling dizzy or lightheaded, as if the cell itself is trying to push them out. But for those who linger too long, the experience becomes far more disturbing. Visitors have reported leaving the cell with scratches, bruises, and bite marks, inflicted by an invisible force. The attacks are sudden and fierce, often happening without warning. Many feel an intense burning sensation on their skin, only to find deep scratches running down their arms or back. Others describe the feeling of sharp teeth biting into their flesh, leaving behind bruises in the shape of a mouth, as though some unseen prisoner is exacting their revenge from beyond the grave. The most chilling accounts, however, come from those who have heard whispered voices within the cell. These voices seem to come from nowhere, often starting as soft murmurs before growing into harsh, angry growls. Visitors have described hearing threats, curses, and chilling commands to leave or get out. The whispers seem to follow them, growing louder until they escape the room, their hearts pounding in terror. One particularly disturbing story involves a tour guide who worked at the gaol for many years. During one of the night tours, the guide was leading a group through the building when they reached Cell 7. As the group stood outside, listening to the guide's tale of the cell's violent reputation, one woman in the group suddenly screamed and collapsed. When she was helped to her feet, the tour guide saw that the woman had 3 long scratches running down her neck, fresh and bleeding. The group immediately fled the cell, too terrified to continue, and the woman was taken to a nearby hospital. She later reported that just before the attack, she had felt a cold hand gripping the back of her neck, pulling her towards the cell. These violent occurrences have left many wondering what kind of spirit could be responsible for the attacks. Some speculate that it could be the ghost of an executed prisoner, angry and seeking revenge on anyone who enters their former domain. Others believe that the entity in Cell 17 was never human at all, but something darker, something that thrives on the fear and pain of the living. The gaol's staff is well aware of the strange happenings in Cell 17, and many refuse to enter the room alone. Even during the day, the atmosphere in the cell is oppressive, as though the very walls are watching and waiting. Security cameras placed outside the cell have captured strange orbs of light, shadowy figures moving through the hall, and sudden fluctuations in temperature that defy explanation. Several guards have quit their jobs after experiencing unexplained events while on duty, unwilling to spend another night in the building. Despite the danger, paranormal investigators continue to flock to the Old Melbourne Gaol in hopes of capturing evidence of the entity that haunts Cell 17. Many leave with strange photos, recordings of eerie voices, and physical marks that serve as a reminder of their encounter. But no one has been able to determine exactly who or what remains trapped within the cell. For those who dare to visit the Old Melbourne Gaol, the experience can be as unsettling as it is fascinating. The history of the place is undeniable, but so too is the presence of something beyond the grave. Cell 17 serves as a stark reminder that some spirits never find peace, and that even in death, their thirst for violence remains. If you ever find yourself at the Gaol, take care when wandering its halls, and whatever you do, think twice before stepping into Cell 10. You may not leave it alone. The Princess Theatre, an iconic landmark in Melbourne, has long been known for its grand performances, opulent architecture, and an undeniable connection to the city's cultural history. But beneath the grandeur of its stage lies a darker, more eerie legacy, a haunting that has persisted for over a century. The ghost of an actor, Frederick Federici, continues to roam the halls, his presence felt by performers, staff, and visitors alike, turning this beloved theatre into one of the most haunted places in Australia. In the late 1800s, during a performance of the opera Faust, Federici, a talented actor and baritone, took to the stage for his final scene. Playing the role of Mephistopheles, he descended through a trapdoor to the underworld as part of the show's dramatic conclusion. To the audience, it seemed like a perfect exit, but tragedy struck in the shadows. As the curtain closed, Federici collapsed beneath the stage, suffering a fatal heart attack. He died instantly, just as his character descended into darkness. What followed has become a lasting legend in Melbourne's supernatural lore. Despite his sudden death, many believe that Federici's spirit never left the Princess Theatre. Some say he continues to perform, reliving his final moments in the building that was once his artistic home. Actors and stagehands have reported strange occurrences for decades. Whispers in empty hallways, cold gusts of air sweeping across the stage, and a ghostly figure in costume standing in the wings, watching each performance as if awaiting his next cue. Federici's ghost is most frequently seen on opening nights, particularly during major performances. Famous actors have spoken about their encounters with him, recounting stories of seeing a man dressed in old-fashioned theater attire, standing silently in the balcony or walking backstage. But as soon as anyone tries to approach, the figure vanishes, leaving behind only an unsettling chill. Some performers even consider his presence a good omen, believing that a visit from Federici ensures a successful show. However, not all encounters with the ghost have been comforting. Many staff members claim to have felt an icy hand on their shoulder, only to turn around and find no one there. The touch is unmistakable, cold and firm, as if someone is trying to get their attention. Others have reported hearing footsteps echoing through the empty corridors late at night, the sound growing louder and louder until it abruptly stops, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. One particularly chilling story involves a cleaner who was working late in the theater after everyone else had left. As she polished the floors of the grand staircase, she suddenly felt a hand grip her arm tightly. Startled, she looked up to see a shadowy figure standing at the top of the stairs, watching her intently. The figure didn't move or speak, but its presence was oppressive, filling the air with dread. The cleaner fled the building and refused to return, convinced that she had come face to face with the ghost of Federici. Another unsettling encounter took place during a rehearsal late one evening. The theater was nearly empty, save for a few crew members adjusting the lights. As they worked, they noticed a man sitting quietly in one of the back rows, dressed in an old-fashioned suit. Assuming he was an actor or a visitor, they paid little attention, but when one of the crew approached to ask him to leave, the man simply disappeared. The seat where he had been sitting was cold to the touch, as though someone or something had just been there. The ghostly presence of Federici is not confined to the stage and auditorium. Many visitors to the theater's upper levels have reported seeing fleeting shadows and hearing faint voices in areas that should be empty. The upper floors especially are notorious for strange occurrences, with some saying they feel as though they are being followed by an unseen presence as they walk through the narrow corridors. One of the most mysterious aspects of the hauntings at the Princess Theater is that Federici's spirit is not malevolent. Despite the chilling experiences, there is a sense that the ghost is not trying to harm anyone. Rather, it seems as though he is still drawn to the theater, unable to leave the place where he spent his final moments. His attachment to the Princess Theater is so strong that many believe he continues to watch over the productions, silently ensuring that the show goes on, just as he did in life. But not all spirits in the Princess Theater are as benevolent as Federici. Over the years, there have been rumors of other entities lurking in the shadows, particularly in the basement, where Federici met his untimely end. The basement is said to be the most haunted part of the theater, with staff reporting feelings of dread, cold spots, and strange noises emanating from the darkness. Some believe that another, more malevolent spirit resides here, one that doesn't share Federici's fondness for the theater or its performers. There are whispers of an angry presence, a spirit that seeks to frighten and intimidate anyone who dares to enter its domain. Whether it is Federici or another entity that haunts the theater, one thing is certain: the Princess Theater is more than just a historic performance venue. It is a place where the past and present collide, where the spirits of the dead still linger, watching, waiting, and perhaps even performing for an audience that can no longer see them. So, the next time you visit the Princess Theater for a performance, keep an eye on the shadows and listen carefully for the faint sounds of footsteps echoing through the halls. You may just find that you're not alone in the audience. The Monte Cristo Homestead in regional New South Wales stands as one of Australia's most haunted locations, its Victorian grandeur concealing a dark history of tragedy and torment. Built in 1885 by Christopher William Crawley, the homestead was once a symbol of wealth and prestige. But beneath its elegant facade, the house being the site of several gruesome deaths and sinister events, leaving behind a legacy of restless spirits that continue to haunt the grounds. One of the most infamous tragedies involves a young, stable boy who met a horrific end. Trapped in a stable fire, he was unable to escape the flames that engulfed the building. His agonized screams echoed through the night, but by the time help arrived, it was too late. His charred remains were discovered in the ashes, and the cause of the fire remains a mystery to this day. Some say it was no accident, whispering rumors of foul play. Today, visitors to the homestead claim they can still hear the distant cries of the boy, particularly at dusk when the shadows begin to lengthen. His ghost is often spotted wandering the grounds, his figure barely visible in the flickering light, as though eternally searching for an escape from the flames. The tragedy of the maid who fell from the second-floor balcony is another chilling story that haunts the Monte Cristo homestead. There are conflicting accounts of her death. Some believe she slipped and fell in a tragic accident, while others suggest she was pushed. The true circumstances of her demise remain shrouded in mystery, but her presence at the homestead is undeniable. Guests frequently report seeing her ghostly figure standing on the balcony and gazing out across the property as if waiting for something or someone. On certain nights, witnesses have claimed to see her falling, only for her form to vanish before hitting the ground, replaying the final moments of her life in an endless, nightmarish loop. But it is not only these two spirits that linger within the walls of Monte Cristo. Many who stay at the homestead experience a profound sense of unease, as though they are constantly being watched. One particularly terrifying account comes from a visitor who stayed the night in one of the upstairs bedrooms. She awoke in the dead of night to find a family of 3, a man, a woman, and a small child, standing at the foot of her bed, silently staring at her. Their expressions were blank, almost lifeless, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't move or scream. The encounter lasted what felt like an eternity, but when she finally blinked, The spectral family had vanished without a trace. To this day, she swears it was not a dream. The homestead's haunted reputation does not end there. Paranormal investigators have reported strange phenomena throughout the property. Doors slamming on their own, disembodied voices whispering from empty rooms, and cold spots that appear without warning. In the homestead's drawing room, a heavy presence can sometimes be felt, as though an unseen force is pressing down on anyone who dares to enter. Some believe this to be the spirit of Elizabeth Crawley, Christopher Crawley's wife, who reportedly became a recluse after her husband's death and rarely left the house. It is said that her spirit remains, watching over the home she once ruled with an iron hand. Perhaps the most unsettling presence in the house is found in the former nursery where the Crawley children once slept. Visitors report the sound of children's laughter and footsteps running down the halls, even though no living children are present. Some have even claimed to see the small handprints of children appear on the dust-covered furniture, only to disappear moments later. The sense of playfulness is often accompanied by an overwhelming sadness, as though the spirits of the children are trapped in a perpetual state of loneliness, forever separated from their families. Monte Cristo's dark past also includes a particularly harrowing story involving a housekeeper's son. It is said that the young boy who had a disability was chained to a wall in the homestead's caretaker's cottage for years, treated more like an animal than a human being. He died under mysterious circumstances, his body found cold and neglected. His spirit is said to be one of the most active on the property, filled with anger and sorrow from the cruel treatment he endured in life. Guests staying near the cottage have reported hearing the clanking of chains in the night and seeing shadowy figures moving just out of sight. As you walk through the halls of the Monte Cristo Homestead, the weight of its grim history is palpable. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of a candle seems to carry with it the echoes of the past. The air is thick with the presence of the unseen, and for those who visit, it is impossible to ignore the sense that the dead still walk among the living. The homestead's many ghosts seem unwilling or unable to leave, bound forever to the place where their lives ended in tragedy. So, if you ever find yourself in regional New South Wales, be sure to visit the Monte Cristo Homestead. If you dare but mourn, the spirits of this house do not always rest easy, and you may find yourself face to face with the lingering souls who call this haunted manor home. The Larundel Mental Asylum in Melbourne, a place long abandoned yet steeped in chilling history, has become infamous for its unnerving atmosphere and paranormal activity. Once a facility for treating the mentally ill, its past is marked by untold suffering, despair, and ghostly encounters that continue to haunt the crumbling halls. The faded walls, now covered in graffiti, tell only a fraction of the stories that echo through the asylum's desolate corridors. Among the many tales that have emerged from Larundel's dark past, one of the most chilling is the story of a young girl who once lived within its walls. Details of her life remain scarce, shrouded in mystery, but it is said that she arrived at the asylum alone, a fragile soul abandoned by the world outside. Her only companion was a small music box, a cherished possession that brought her comfort amid the cold, clinical environment of Larundel. She would sit in her room, winding the delicate mechanism, listening to its soft, melodic tune over and over as the world around her fell into silence. Tragically, like so many others who entered Larundel, the young girl never left. Whether she succumbed to illness, despair, or some darker fate remains unclear, but her presence lingers within the asylum's decaying walls. Many believe that her spirit still wanders the empty corridors, bound to the only home she ever knew. Visitors brave enough to explore the derelict asylum after dark often speak of hearing the faint, haunting melody of her music box, drifting through the ruined halls like a ghostly lullaby. The sound is so distinct that it pierces through the eerie quiet, sending shivers down the spines of those who hear it. There are those who claim to have seen her, a shadowy figure dressed in a tattered white gown, standing at the end of long, abandoned corridors. She appears as a fleeting presence, her head bowed as if lost in thought, the music box cradled in her hands. Witnesses describe a profound sense of sadness in her appearance, as if she is searching for something or someone that she will never find. Others have reported seeing her in the asylum's courtyard, where the overgrown grass and crumbling stone create an eerie setting for her spectral form to linger. But it is not just her ghostly appearance that unsettles those who visit Larendel. On certain nights, when the moonlight casts long shadows across the asylum grounds, the faint strains of the music box grow louder. The tune becomes distorted, warping into something unnatural, as though it is being played by unseen hands. The melody lingers, echoing off the walls, trapping anyone within earshot in a haze of fear. Some have described feeling an overwhelming sense of dread as the music plays, as though the very walls are closing in on them, suffocating them with the weight of the asylum's dark past. One particularly terrifying account comes from a group of urban explorers who entered the asylum late one night. As they made their way through the labyrinth of empty rooms, they began to hear the unmistakable sound of the music box. At first, it seemed distant, almost faint, but as they ventured deeper into the building, the sound grew louder, as if it were following them. Panic set in as the music began to fill the entire floor, echoing from every direction. When they turned a corner, they were met with the sight of the young girl's ghost standing motionless at the far end of the hall. Her eyes were hollow, her pale face devoid of emotion, and in her hands she clutched the music box. Before they could react, the ghost vanished, leaving behind only the sound of the haunting melody. Even now, years after the asylum closed its doors, the hauntings of Larendel continue to draw those curious or foolish enough to seek out its spirits. Paranormal investigators and thrill-seekers alike have documented strange occurrences, cold spots that seem to materialize without warning, disembodied whispers that echo through the halls, and the unmistakable feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. The most unsettling of all is the persistent sound of the music box, playing its melancholic tune long after the living have left. Locals warn against visiting the asylum after dark, but for those who dare, the ghost of the young girl is a reminder of the suffering that once filled these walls. Some say she is still waiting, her soul trapped within the asylum's decaying structure, unable to find peace. Others believe that the music box is her way of reaching out, a plea for someone to release her from the torment of her eternal loneliness. Whatever the truth may be, the Larendel Mental Asylum stands as a stark reminder of the dark history of mental health treatment and the souls who were lost within its walls. The young girl's music box plays on a ghostly melody that haunts the ruins, ensuring that her story and the stories of all those who suffered there will never be forgotten. Port Arthur, located in Tasmania, stands as a somber reminder of Australia's grim penal history. Once a notorious convict settlement, its stone walls and weathered ruins tell stories of hardship, punishment, and despair. Today, Port Arthur is a place where history and the supernatural blend seamlessly, and it's no surprise that it's reputed to be one of the most haunted sites in the country. Among the many ghostly presences that roam this former penal colony, the most well-known is the Blue Lady, a tragic figure whose sorrowful tale has echoed through time. She was once the wife of a prison guard, and her life at Port Arthur was marred by tragedy when she died during childbirth along with her newborn baby. From that moment on, her spirit has been seen wandering the grounds, forever searching for the child she lost. Visitors and staff at Port Arthur have reported countless sightings of the Blue Lady. Dressed in an ethereal, flowing blue gown, she is often seen walking the corridors of the old buildings or standing near the prison hospital where she drew her last breath. But what sets her apart from other spirits is the deep sorrow that seems to accompany her presence. Those who encounter the Blue Lady describe an overwhelming feeling of grief and despair, as if they too are sharing in her eternal mourning. The Blue Lady's appearances are often preceded by an unnatural chill in the air. Many visitors have reported feeling an icy breeze sweep through the room, even on the warmest days, just before they catch a glimpse of her spectral form. Some have heard the faint sound of a woman's weeping echoing through the stone walls. It's said that her cries are not just those of grief, but of a mother's desperate plea to be reunited with her lost child. One of the most unnerving tales connected to the Blue Lady comes from a family who visited Port Arthur on a quiet, misty afternoon. While exploring the old commandant's house, they ventured into a room said to be one of the most haunted. As they stood admiring the view from a window, the youngest child, a girl of about 5, suddenly turned pale and clung to her mother, pointing toward the door. The mother turned to see what had frightened her daughter, only to be met with the sight of the Blue Lady standing in the doorway. Her face was veiled in shadow, but her outstretched arms and the anguished expression on her face were unmistakable. She seemed to be reaching out as if pleading for help. The family fled the room, but the memory of the encounter remained with them, a chilling reminder of the lingering sadness that haunts Port Arthur. Another eerie story comes from a group of paranormal investigators who spent the night at Port Arthur. Armed with cameras and recording devices, they set out to document the ghostly activity that had long been reported. While exploring the old prison cells, they heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoing through the empty halls, but no one was there. As they continued, a sudden gust of icy wind blew through the corridor, followed by the sound of soft, desperate cries. Their equipment picked up an unexplained voice, whispering the word "baby" over and over again. Moments later, one of the investigators saw the figure of the Blue Lady standing at the end of the corridor, her form flickering like a candle flame before disappearing into thin air. But the Blue Lady is not the only ghost said to haunt Port Arthur. Convict spirits, still bound to the place of their suffering, have been seen wandering the dark corners of the site. Cell doors slam shut on their own, dart between the ruins, and the sound of chains rattling can sometimes be heard in the dead of night. Some visitors have even felt an invisible hand grasp their shoulder, as if one of the long-dead convicts is still trying to make their presence known. The paranormal activity at Port Arthur is so frequent that ghost tours are now a regular attraction, allowing brave souls to explore the most haunted parts of the site under the cover of darkness. Tour guides recount chilling stories of past sightings, and many participants leave with their own personal tales of encounters with the unexplained. The Blue Lady, however, remains the most famous and tragic of Port Arthur's spirits. Her endless search for her lost child serves as a haunting reminder of the sorrow that permeates the walls of this historic site. As long as her soul remains tethered to the grounds of Port Arthur, the ghost of the Blue Lady will continue to wander, her heartbreaking cries echoing through the ruins, her grief felt by all who cross her path. Richmond Bridge, nestled in the quiet town of Richmond, Tasmania, is a historic marvel, a relic from Australia's early colonial days. Built in 1825, it stands as the oldest bridge in the country, its sturdy sandstone arches having withstood nearly 2 centuries of time. But beyond its historical significance, Richmond Bridge holds a darker, more sinister reputation. It is often referred to as Australia's most haunted bridge, and for good reason. Lurking beneath its weathered stone facade is the vengeful spirit of George Grover, a man whose restless soul continues to torment those who dare cross the bridge after dark. George Grover was once a brutal overseer tasked with supervising the convicts assigned to build and maintain the bridge. Known for his cruelty, Grover would often lash out at the men under his charge, delivering harsh punishment for even the smallest infractions. He ruled with an iron fist, showing no mercy as he used his position to abuse and terrorize the convicts who worked day and night beneath the scorching sun. But it was this ruthless cruelty that would ultimately lead to his untimely death. One fateful night, after a long day of overseeing repairs on the bridge, Grover was making his way home when a group of convicts, seeking revenge for the years of torment they had endured, ambushed him. They beat him mercilessly, their rage boiling over as they dragged him to the edge of the bridge. Under the cover of darkness, they pushed him off, leaving his lifeless body to lie in the shallow waters below. Though the details of his death were quickly hushed, the locals soon realized that Grover's spirit was far from at peace. To this day, those who cross Richmond Bridge often report encounters with Grover's angry ghost. His presence is felt most strongly at night, when the moon casts eerie shadows over the bridge's arches, and the air grows unnaturally cold. Many describe an overwhelming sense of dread as they walk across the bridge, as though they are being watched, stalked even. Some visitors claim to have seen a dark figure standing on the bridge, his form obscured by the mist that often rises from the river below. As they approach, the figure vanishes, only to reappear moments later, closer and more menacing. But Grover's haunting goes beyond mere sightings. Aggression is a hallmark of his ghostly presence. Several visitors have reported feeling a sudden forceful shove as they make their way across the bridge, as if an invisible hand is pushing them toward the edge. Others have experienced a sharp pain in their backs or legs, eerily reminiscent of the whippings Grover used to dole out. One chilling account comes from a man who, while walking his dog late one evening, felt a powerful grip on his shoulder. When he turned, there was no one there, but the bruises that formed on his skin told a different story. Locals believe that Grover's spirit is bound to the bridge by the violence of his death, his rage festering over the years as he seeks to exact revenge on anyone who crosses his path. His anger is not only directed at the living, it seems to extend to the very land around him. On particularly stormy nights, when the wind howls and the rain pours, it's said that Grover's screams can be heard echoing through the valley, a chilling reminder of his brutal end. One legend tells of a group of paranormal investigators who visited Richmond Bridge, determined to capture evidence of Grover's ghost. As they set up their equipment, the atmosphere grew heavy, and the air seemed to crackle with energy. Suddenly, one of the investigators felt an intense pressure around his throat, as though he were being strangled. Gasping for breath, he stumbled backward, only to find deep red marks circling his neck. The group fled, their equipment left behind, but the experience left them shaken and convinced that Grover's vengeful spirit still prowled the bridge. Another terrifying encounter occurred when a young couple, unaware of the bridge's haunted reputation, decided to stop for a late-night walk across it. As they reached the midpoint, the woman noticed a shadowy figure pacing back and forth at the far end. Thinking it was another late-night stroller, she called out, but the figure didn't respond. Instead, it seemed to rush toward them, moving faster than any human could. They barely had time to react before they felt a powerful gust of wind, and the figure disappeared, leaving them paralyzed with fear. While many brave souls still venture to Richmond Bridge, seeking a glimpse of the infamous George Grover, there are those who warn against tempting fate. His spirit, filled with rage and bitterness, continues to seek retribution for the wrongs he suffered in life. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, one thing is certain: Richmond Bridge is not just a relic of the past. It's a place where the line between the living and the dead grows thin, and where George Grover's wrathful presence still lingers, waiting for its next victim. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share the video. See you next time.